Hi, everybody. It's Nancy with For Your Canine.
And Joanne with For Better For Worse.
And Lisa with Canine Defined.
Tinkle. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I hope you've all had a great weekend. We had such good weather today. We were at a trial. That's where Joanne's going home from. Anyway, today we're going to kind of answer some questions. We didn't actually get a lot of questions from you guys, but we decided we can kind of talk about questions that we get on a regular basis through the course of working with our dogs or working with our clients that seem to be pretty commonplace. Um, and people, ask us on, how to do that, how to do certain things, or some interesting things that we find that we were just talking, how we're having some of these same questions we had many years ago when we first started training, that those questions are still out there, and people are still asking them. So I thought that was so interesting. And I think it goes back to, and Lisa, you can chime in. I think it goes back to some of the training that's still out there, the old school training. I know the dominance thing, the dominance theory, and the being the alpha, and all those kind of things are still out there. So one of the questions I get a lot is, should my dog be on the couch or sleep on the bed with us? Is he trying to be dominant, or is that going to cause him to be dominant if he sleeps on the bed, or is up on the furniture? Um, and my answer always is, if it's okay with you, and the only time it would be an issue is if you ask your dog to get off the couch, or if you're trying to get on the couch or on the bed and the dog's not letting you by resource guarding it, then that's a different story, right? That's not the same problem. So those are some of the things that but if it doesn't bother you, it doesn't, dogs don't live their lives going, I'm going to dominate this person and I'm going to be in charge and all that stuff. They just don't live that's not how they operate, right? They do tend to do what works for them, right? So if they get on the couch, they like being on the couch, and then you tell them to get off, and they're like, I don't want to, and then you back off, then we have a different problem, right? And a lot of it, there's still a lot of trainers out there saying that you shouldn't allow your dogs um, to be on the furniture or be on the bed or whatever it is. And it's a personal choice for you and your family, and what works for you and in your family. So the other issue is, if you're a young couple and you want to have a child, and the dog sleeps on the bed, what's going to happen when the baby comes, right? So it's better to kind of set that up correctly on before the baby comes. So yeah, the dog's not going to decide he's going to be dominant, or he's going to be in charge if he's on the couch or on the whatever he is, right? So wouldn't you agree, Lisa, that it comes from some of the training? Because I know where you live, there's a little more.
Yes, there's a different train of thought around here. Um, but yes, like the other day, I was just at a private lesson in home and in my area, and one of the things that came up was, should I care that the dog sleeps on the bed or is on the couch? And I'm like, I don't care. My dogs are allowed on the bed or couch, but the second if they start to get all sassy with me, I'm like, oh, you've lost that privilege. And you know, I think a lot of people think it is, a height seeking type of behavior. And if you look at dominance, what it really is it's got a negative connotation to it. But if you actually look at the actual definition of it, doesn't read the same. It's the access to the opportunity, and so forth, and taking that. So it's pretty interesting. But I think overall, though, no. I mean, people have a bad idea. Should I not? Should I? And again, I'm not. I don't care as long as you're not having issues with the dogs that are like, I can't get on the couch.
Right.
Don't touch me, don't move me, stuff like that. And then you assess, is it because the dog is sore? Can they not hear you? Right? There's always the why that you have to consider if there's something else going on. So,
Right, right. Right. You definitely want to assess why those things are happening. And in some cases it is that the dog is, not feeling well or whatever. So then it's one of those things that you definitely want to address it at that time. But allowing your dog on the couch or on the bed or whatever is not an issue. So I'm going to tell you, I do allow my dogs on the furniture, but they don't sleep with me. As I've gotten older, they used to, when my previous dogs, they don't anymore because I have become a pretty light sleeper. So unfortunately, they interrupt my sleep a lot. So they do sleep in my room with us on dog beds, but they don't sleep. This set of dogs don't sleep on the bed because I can't sleep, and they're big too. So there's not enough room
There's
for.
the size difference. The size matters, right? Because I have Ivy and Riff sleep in bed with us, and then my little wonderful little 5 o'clock alarm goes off with the Papillon grabbing our toes and our fingers and pulling the covers off of us and jumping on our chest. So
Yeah, right.
that's going to change. So, but yeah,
Right.
um,
Yeah. So yeah, it's one of those things that yeah, I wouldn't. It's again, it's what's good for you and your family, right? That's really the important. If your family doesn't care and it's not a problem, then don't sweat it. Again, most dogs aren't going to be like, "Ooh, I'm in charge because I'm on the couch." Doesn't work like that, right? It doesn't work. Um, I don't. It just doesn't work like that. All right. And then about dominance. About I'm going to tell you a story. I had a client. It was just like some of the stuff is crazy. I had a client tell me that another trainer told them that they have to eat in front of the dog out of the food bowl so that the dog would understand that he's in charge. And I thought to myself, yikes. It's just, I was like, it was hard for me not to laugh. And the person wanted to be right so much that I was like, no, no. So eating in front of the dog or going out the door first. The reason we teach for us to go out the door first is not a dominance or alpha thing. It's a safety thing. You want to make sure you can assess what's out there before you cross the yeah, I know, right, Deb? You want to make sure that everything's clear, even if you have a nice dog, whether it's a nice dog or whether it's a dog that has issues. I want to make sure my dogs are safe. So I want to make sure I'm going to check what's out there before I let my dogs go. I don't let them run out the door, right? Because it's just, again, it's a safety reason, not because I'm in charge. I don't I eat in front of my dogs and they share. It's just so I thought that was an interesting. I go, oh my god, so it's interesting what people are saying out there, what other trainers are telling people to do. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's absolutely crazy. I was like, what? I thought she was. You're right. I thought she was joking, like punking me, because I'm like, that's no,
yeah.
no, right?
But I've also heard, I mean, the alpha roll is kind of a thing, right? Have you heard
Oh
that?
yeah, totally.
The alpha roll and so forth, and which is basically you take and pin your dog on its back and don't let it up until it submits.
Right.
And I think that is really inappropriate because if my husband tried to do that to me, it would be problematic.
Yes, it would.
So,
Especially for him. Just like,
oh,
yeah.
this is a good one. Not my training style, but comments on Dog Daddy or Caesar. When can or does aversive come into play? So I think, Tim,
Lisa.
can you, what's that?
Go ahead, take it, Lisa.
So I think, first of all, Caesar's done some amazing things bringing training to the forefront and exercise and the leadership and stuff like that. The problem or the concern is how he gets there. And, TV is always snippets. You're not seeing the full gamut of what actually is occurring. So as far as when can or does aversive come into play, and I don't know if you're talking about aversive techniques because it depends on what the technique is, right? Because there's always various types of it. Removal of something that's wanted is still considered it's not a positive thing, right? So
right.
I guess it depends on what you're referring to as aversive coming into play.
Yeah.
So if you can elaborate. I mean,
So
I can
one of
make
the
guesses, but
so Tim, I saw a one of Caesar's training, and it was a Vizsla that had moved from the country to New York City, so it was really congested. So the Vizsla was having a lot of difficulty in New York with the traffic and all the environment. It was really stressing the dog out. So Caesar's solution to that was tying a rope around the dog's tail and tying it to the collar so his tail would be up, and that would change the way he feels about being in New York City. And that was really and the
Mhm.
dog was very stressed in that episode. A lot of panting, a lot of, I mean, it was really hard to watch. um and so to me, that's almost, so that's what and like Lisa said, it depends on the aversives, because you not that you not I'm not going to say we don't use punishment, like give a dog a timeout, or whatever. That's a punishment, or like you said, taking away something they want, right? um
Mhm.
so I think, and I'm going to be honest, adversives or punishment does work. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it doesn't work, because it does actually for some dogs. For some dogs, it was just fine, and so it depends on the level of adversives. And I think if you're going to add punishment, it should fit the crime, and it should also fit the dog. So, for example, if you have a very for some dogs, if I tell my shepherd, no, or I yell at him, let's say, for him, that's a pretty big punishment, right? He's like, oh my God, right? Versus my lab, she needs a little more. So it's almost like, so it just depends on what you would use. So you always are looking for, so it's not always physical correction, but sometimes it's like if the dog, like for a shepherd, for my shepherds, as all both of my shepherds, if you close the door on him and take yourself away from him because they're doing something wrong, that's huge punishment for that dog.
Right.
He gets, I mean, it's a very emotional thing for him, right? So um and for my labs, they'll be like, they'll just probably lay by the door and be like, all right, but the shepherd would be very upset by me be disappearing and not being by him and not touching him and all that. So
And one of the things I do want to say about using that, you're right. Like, I think it depends on the dog, it depends on the level, and it depends on the situation. Like, I'm not big into correcting puppies, or like some people grab their snouts if they're mouthing and stuff. I'm like, I don't do that. I
right.
don't care regardless, because I think it's a quick resolution, and it doesn't last, right? Unless you have that pressure always present, depending on the type of version you're using. But I think like the alpha rolls or that kind of stuff is really it causes great damage in the relationship, because then you're unpredictable and you're doing things that don't make sense. It's not something that happens in their world regularly. So I'll do a removal, just trying to think, if a puppy gets too mouthy or whatever, they're a little overstimulated. So instead of me correcting them and saying that's not okay, I might escort them to something appropriate, or potentially maybe they're over threshold and they need a minute. So they'll go into their kennel and
Mhm.
hang out, or what have you, because you can't have a conversation with anyone who's overstimulated,
Right.
regardless of species.
Well, remember Lisa with Bailey. She would have moments of very high stimulus, and she just would. You could not console her. She was so naughty, and really every time that happened, she needed a nap.
Yeah.
She just
Like a
needed.
child, right?
She needed to go in a crate and take a nap, and she'd cry a little bit in the crate, and she'd be like, okay, and she'd be out before I turned around,
Yeah.
because that's what she just needed that downtime. And sometimes a lot of, for our dogs, I know for my Tango, he needs to calm down. So sometimes putting him in another room, or putting him in a crate helps, just relax him a little bit and calm him down. So it really depends on the dog, right? On the dog and what they can handle. But I think what we tend to do is use a one size fits all, and we just use the I have 4 different dogs, and there's no way I would, and then now we was talking to Joanne. I have my beagle that I just rescued. Now it's going to be September 2nd will be a year I got her. Now, if I would go clap my hands and get her to stop something, she'd be like, "Oh God, stop!" Now it doesn't work like that anymore. She goes, "It's okay. I'm not bothered by it. I'll keep doing it." So I'm like, "Okay." So then we have to increase. Now we have to remove her from things. The interruption has to be a little bit more severe because now she's and again for her, because now she's a lot more confident. She's changed to how she sees the world. So we need to adjust how we how we work with her, right? Because she's naughty that way now. She's like, clapping is okay. It doesn't bother me any. So it's like, oh no, that means you got to stop it. And so now she'll look at me and she'll be like, still doing it. So and that she's a lot more confident than she was when I had her a year ago, right? So also you got to remember that as puppies grow and dogs get more comfortable, especially those that are rescues, you will see some of those changes. They'll be like, before maybe that was enough, and then now it's not so much, right? It doesn't work as well. Yeah.
Well, and I also have a dog. It's got to be contextual, right? So like Fire, my border collie, she can be looking at Nancy's cats, right? And you can be like, knock it off. I mean, you can actually get pretty forceful not physically, but verbally, right? And even sometimes take her collar, like, that's enough. And she's like, blah, 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 right? So,
yes.
In a sport like Nosework that I play with her, where I had to rebuild her confidence from zero, right? We did a workshop a couple weeks back, and she actually stopped on a distractor container. It had, I don't know, like a whole bratwurst in it or something ridiculous, right? And she sort of was like, it wasn't even an alert, but she was like, do you know what's in here? Right? And all I did was like, oh, do you think that's something? And she just, my face changed, her ears went back, and she melted and left the search, like wanted to go back to her crate. That was it. That was all I did. I didn't even say no. And she was like, I can't handle this. Oh my God. Right. But she's that soft in that sport because of where she came from. Right now in life, she's like, whatever. So
yeah, but and Tango, he finds barking so reinforcing. It's very difficult to get him to not to do that. He really enjoys it a great deal. So it's one of those things. But yeah, Tim, that's a really good question. And sometimes if it's a life and death situation, that's where I'm going to go back to that question. If it's a life and death situation where your dog's gonna die if you don't do something, even if it's adversive, that's maybe the only time I might go, okay, I guess it's gonna have to be, because I don't, so you can live, right? So like I had a client that had a dog that used to chase cars, and she lived out in the country. So she had to use a pretty adversive methods to get her to stop doing that, because it was either that or the dog was going to get hit by a car and die, right? So that's the only, and she tried all the other positive stuff, and the dog's like, nope, still got to do that. So the adversive had to be pretty severe for the dog to stop doing that. But that was either because there's no way she could have fenced, and she was gonna, she could have probably not let her out on leash or whatever, but that was just a difficult situation for that dog. So they did have to use a little bit more force and to get her to stop chasing cars. And then when she did, then it was less of a problem, right? But again, I'm not really big on super adversive unless it's really warranted, right? and it has to be, like, again, to me, a life and death situation.
Well,
And I go ahead.
go ahead, Lisa.
No, you go.
I was just gonna say there are things like depending on how the dog views things as aversive, right? But I mean, one of the other things that I have done, right, back when I used to foster dogs all the time, big aversives is if you're fighting, right? I might throw a bag of cans at you or splash you with water, or now they have those air cans, the big
Yeah.
air, and those are pretty scary, especially people who use them in like day-to-day life corrections, because we have a trainer here that's recommending that. And anyway, so I think when you talk about an aversive in a training perspective, if you use it, you should use it and it should make an impact, and that should be it, right?
Right.
It shouldn't be, and I mean, I don't want to like bring in e-collars, but that's the biggest thing I always find is like, we're going to buzz it, and then we're going to have a little one, and then we're going to have another little one. And the dog pretty much is like, yeah, whatever. Right. And again, I'm not promoting it, but the true use of that stuff is to get the dog the stimulation so it understands what a vibration is. And then once you know how to do something, if you like, you know what I mean? Like, or when you look at that cat and you're going to eat it, it should take once, maybe twice of a big aversive, and the dog should go, that really sucked. I'm not doing that again.
Right.
And it's hard to think about how to put
Right.
something that aversive on your dog, but that's really what they were meant to be.
Yeah. They're not supposed to be forever.
Yeah, but a lot of people do, right? Because it's easier to click the remote to change the channel than to get up and change it, right? It's kind of the same idea. It's like, stop that. And you do find a lot of people using it. I'll tell you, like, with the prong collar, for example, I didn't use it. I had to use it on my shepherd because she was, the shepherds, if they get a chance to pull, they're going to pull like crazy. So she was really bad, and she went through a teenage time. And I tried all the other stuff. Nothing was working. And just that amount of it was enough for her to be like, okay, I won't do it. And then I started switching over to the regular collar again, right? So it was to help clarify a question that I apparently had muddied, right, for her. And then I went back to, okay, let's try that again. So the goal is, for me, for one, it's not my favorite tool of choice, any of that. However, there's some cases where, and for her, it wasn't enough of a correction to freak her out, right? Because the body, she's like, all right, I'll stop. And, and that was enough to make information to her and how to handle it too, right? But it does require a savvy handler when you're doing those things, because you have to be able to read the dog, and the problem is most people are late on our marker cues. Yeah, we're way late on way late on everything. You're predictive, like predictive text. But so I think that's a really big deal. Like, people don't realize, well, why aren't they stopping? And you keep, I don't know. It's
Yeah. And so another question people ask.
I have one.
What-
Whenever
Go
you're done.
ahead.
Sorry.
Well, one of them was about socialization. What's yours?
Mine's about sniffing.
Oh, go ahead. Let's do the sniffing, since we probably have a lot of nosework folks.
Well, nosework or obedience or agility, or it's mostly sporting folks, right?
Right.
So when your dog is sniffing before your run, or they sniff during your run, or what are those things, right? So let's talk about before your run. It takes them out of the right frame of mind. They're not ready to work. They're not connected to you. So I think of all the things that we have learned. Like, that's what a lot of people think, right? As soon as that dog drops its nose to the ground, it's basically giving you the finger.
right.
Right. And so I think of all the things that we have learned about dogs and sniffing and what it does in the brain. So interesting, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
I would say that's the last thing to do is the dog is doing is blowing you off. It's more so like, I hear you, I got you, I'm having some feelings. Can you give me a minute to work this out, and I will be right back with you. But we don't. What do we do? Stop that. Don't sniff that. Blah, blah, blah. A matter of fact, I had a conversation with Tom today because we were waiting to do a run, and we were one of the last people to go, and there's the staging chair, right? And Bam was just, I said he was sniffing every dog's butt that had been on that ground before we went to run. And you know, back in the day, and Tom said the same thing, like back in the day, we were all told, like, don't let them do that, right? It's, oh, they're getting so out of focus for what they're supposed to do. I was like, go for it, dude, because he turns it on at the start line. And to me, that's his prep. Stop. That's his prep work, right? That's his Michael Phelps. I got my iPod on and I'm like,
Yes.
before the run, right? I mean, he's making his own mind right. I mean, yeah, he's taking in a lot of other dog information, but if you don't have a problem during the thing, don't, like, more power to you, dog. You take your precursor motion. Sorry, my guys have been in crates for 2 days and they're a little psycho, so I apologize. Lisa, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I know. No, Nancy had something else about socialization, but
and you know, well, to go back to the sniffing, because sniffing also helps dogs calm down some. So if your dog's in a stressful environment, sniffing will help calm him down. So giving that minute to sniff and kind of get adjusted is kind of a helpful thing. And I think it also takes the fight out of it, right? You're not arguing with the dog. You're like, okay, you can check this out for a minute, and okay, when I ask you, you're going to work. Because yes, my dog also was sniffing that same area, and he was, and I just let him. And then when we went in there, he was like, yep, I'm gonna do my job now. You know, and he just likes to sniff because he's looking for chicks, but but it didn't bother me. I was just waiting, and we were just kind of hanging out, and then he stopped after a while, and I was petting him, and then we went into the thing, and we, you know, just you know, there's a lot of reasons dogs do that and disengage a little bit, and it's not the worst thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if it happens during, right,
yes,
that's a lot of information for you as a handler. You are putting too much pressure on your dog, or the environment is, or something. The dog's saying, I need a minute. This is too much. So
right.
It's not saying, I don't want to do what you're asking me to do, which is the common theme, right? People think the dog's like, screw you, I'm going to go sniff this. It's not. The dog's saying, whatever's happening right now is too much for me. Can you give me a second?
Right. Right. So the one thing I wanted to address, because I know some of you guys have young dogs out there, about socialization. And you know, sometimes you have all these lists. People give you these big long lists that you should have seen. You know, you used to see. One of the things about socialization, and we have some lovely breeders. There was a breeder that came from a dog that came from a breeder that was in a remote part of the world or country, and they said, oh yeah, my dog is really used to people. But the thing is, this dog only saw the same people all the time. So yes, he was fine with all the same people, and when he went to a new place, there was new people, and he had a very difficult time with that. So one of the things about socialization, I think you need to kind of decide what your lifestyle is, what also things you're projecting to want to have in your life. Like if you're planning to have a child or you're planning to have all this stuff, then you could decide what you're going to socialize them to. One of the things you should always socialize you to is to be good around other people and be able to have other people handle your dog, because that can, you know, anytime we could have an accident can happen, or you need somebody to be able to hold your dog or handle your dog. Those are all things that they should be able to they should have. That's a skill, a social skill they should have. But you need to work up to that, right? Especially with a young dog, right? My puppy is very attached to me, so when I give him to someone else, there's a little drama, and you know, and so usually I'll let somebody hold him where he can still see me, and I come back and it's fine. And now he's getting more comfortable with that eventually. And with people he knows well, yes, I could leave him and walk away and not be seen, and he's fine. But also just new people, and also being more comfortable around new dogs. But my dogs have to have, because of the lifestyle we lead, he has to be used to being around a lot of dogs, a lot of different people, and a lot of new environments. So for me, when they're young, that's the important is getting them out to different places, and really you don't have to go out very many places. Just on the way, if you're on your way somewhere, stop, take them out, hang out for a second, get back in the car, and keep going. That's enough as long as you give them a lot of different variety of social of exterior places. So it's one of those things that it depends on what your lifestyle is, or if you have a very busy home, or if you have a quiet home. All those things matter, so you can socialize your dog properly, and it's go slow to get there fast, because a lot of people tend to rush it, and that's where the mistakes are made, right? Puppies get scared, things happen, and it's a big problem.
Yeah.
So
I actually just had a call from somebody looking for puppy classes, and they were mentioning the 100 things, 100 days. And I was like, time out. Right. So I think that's still a really huge thing. Like, get them out to as many things and places and people as you can. Right. Which is not true. I would rather you meet 10 amazing people and we go
Yes.
7 amazing places than we went to 70 and 60 of them sucked. But you saw it, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I
So-
think that's a big misnomer, right? Everybody's like, oh no.
Yeah.
As long as they see 100 people. Yeah, but it was that quality, right?
I think too, with the socialization, like people interpret, especially with dog to dog stuff, can be tricky, right? They think that every dog should be able to greet every dog and all that stuff, which is, as we know, not really appropriate nor safe. But I do. It's like, well, my dog doesn't like other dogs, and you know what I'm saying? I remember a lady telling me, I'm like, it's okay if it doesn't like other dogs. He doesn't have to. All he has to do is tolerate the proximity. Period. Right? You don't have to. And if you have a tricky dog who is not into people or is concerned, yes, you want to tread carefully and then build the people that they know or that you can entrust with them, so that they listen to them. But I think you also want to be careful too with that. I mean, because people, and maybe not because you guys have facilities, right? Like I don't trust a lot of people to handle my dog. And the reason being is because they are not as aware of who they are as I am, and will not interpret things and so forth. So, and I have a Dutch Shepherd who's like super bonded to me. She has a hard time being away from me. My fault, right? Something to work on, but whatever. And you pick your battles, right? What's important to you. And like Nancy said, what's the context of your life? Because everybody's lives are different, and my requirements are different from anyone else's because of my situation. So, but yeah, the dog to dog stuff, I think, is like, don't let them greet, on leash in public with a flexi. Bad.
So we were talking about, because we just mentioned some of these questions are so old. Somebody still, I think it was Joanne's client or Lisa's client, they said that if they get hot dogs, if they got treats, human food like chicken or meat or something from human, that they were going to beg, that that would start them begging. That would start a begging behavior. So it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. You can actually give dog food from the table and they'll beg. It doesn't matter. It's a context of where they get it from, right? For them, as far as some of our dogs, chicken is dog food because that's what they get for training sometimes. So they don't know the difference. So.
And the people who want to overfeed from the table, right, and it's created an issue, usually I'll tell them, you know what? Get a bowl, save all whatever you want to give to your puppy, and then use that for training, right? So it's not as if they can't ever have it, but then give it in the context of training versus while you're sitting at the table if you're having those issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was so funny that Joanne's like, I can't believe we're still getting these questions, because these are questions we got, I don't know, 30 years ago. So.
I don't know about 30. No one was feeding their dog chicken 30 years ago.
but they were giving them people food.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So
But there's so much information out on the internet, right? That's so you can look everything up, and everyone has a solution for everything, and their solution is the only way to do it.
Yes.
And you're like, how's that working for you? Right. And then they're like, it's not working. Well, try this instead.
Right. And that goes back to just training, right? I wish there was a one size fits all, that all the training, all the stuff you do, that it'll work for every dog. It might work for some of them, but it's not going to work for all of them. That's why it's important that you learn what works, different things, different tools in the toolbox, so that you have something to use if the dog, because not every dog is going to understand the way you're presenting. Because I think some people say, oh, my dog's just stupid. I don't think that at all. I think the dog just is, the way it's being the information is being presented, he doesn't understand it. So you'll have to figure out another way to explain it, right? It's like no different than a human being. You're going to explain let's say you're explaining a concept or whatever, and you explain a concept, whatever it is, and then they don't get it. It's like, okay, then you got to figure out another way to explain it to that person. Not that they're stupid. They just need a different explanation, a different presentation. And it goes back to, I had a student that has been a student of mine for a long time, and she's doing really well in her sport. And she says, I went to a seminar and they said all these great things that of course I've been telling her for years, or that I've also addressed. And she, in her mind, it was just, but you know what? She was just ready to hear it at that time from that person. And the way that person presented it was better, easier for her to understand than the way obviously I presented it. Doesn't mean that I was wrong. It was just, I didn't obviously presented it in the way that she needed to hear it. Right.
Well, and I think too, you have to be, and granted that was in person, but you have to be very careful on social media these days, right? Like you can see the coolest thing, like, oh my God, how do I get my dog to do that? Right. And I'll never forget, I'm not even going to make a mention, but like, have you guys seen the video where they make like they play like Mission Impossible, and they make the obstacle course for the squirrel to like get to the bird feeder? Have you seen any of those videos where they're like, it's gonna go through the rope and like through the tunnel and over the thing? Anyway, super cool, right? Well, I remember a video floating around of a dog doing something similar. And Nancy and I happened to meet that person. The methodology of that super amazing video, and it looked so cool. My dogs work for every morsel of food they have. If they don't perform tricks, they don't eat. You're like, well, what happens if they're not feeling well? Or that they don't eat for days if they don't perform. They have to do what I ask them to do if they want food. And that is just, once you find that out, and like now I watch that video and it makes me sick. Like, just like, how can you deprive a basic
need
necessity, right? For a trick to make that dog do something? What happens if it's got a sore knee? What happens if it's got arthritis? What happens if it's got an upset stomach that day? Right? Like, I don't buy that. Dogs should have free access to food and water and safety. That's
freedoms, all the freedoms.
Yes. Yep. Like and if you are one of those people who only train for that, and even us nosework folks, right? Like you hear of the officers that do that. A lot of them do it for 6 weeks, right? That's how the dogs eat for 6 weeks. It's not a lifetime thing for those dogs. It's a basic training thing, right? And again, it's a different world that they live in, but I'm not okay with that ever.
Yeah, and it's not that you shouldn't use their food to train them sometimes. Right. Sometimes we tell people that, but you're not going to not feed them if they don't perform, right? It's different. Like we'll tell people, bring half of your dinner or half your breakfast or half your lunch or whatever. If you have a dog that's not super motivated, if you already have like my all of my dogs can eat a full meal and still
Want more? Yes.
They can still have use food for treats, so I don't worry about it, right? I never. But I've had some client dogs. I go, well, feed him part of his dinner at home, and then bring the other half and see if that helps. And it has in some cases. In other cases, no. We just need to find the right motivation, right?
Right. And I would be okay even with like withholding a meal, right? Like if you're really trying to work on something tough, arousal based, or a dog that's really, and they don't exist very often, right? A dog that's really like, I don't care about you at all, right? Yeah, I might try and work that a little bit with really low criteria and like, do you want this? Because you're gonna need to lie down for this. If you can't lie down, I'm not putting the food bowl down, right? It's something super duper simple. But and I would come back again, and I would try again in 20 minutes, and I would try again in 20 minutes, and right, eventually the dog's gonna be like, you suck. I really want that. Well, just lie down.
Right.
Again, the dog needs to know what you're asking it to do. So
Right. And there was I just I had a little lab puppy that I was working with for a couple weeks, and really nice dog. But when he first came, I'm like, does he have a brain cell? Holy smokes, he has nothing going on in there. Because I would try to lure him with a cookie. He's like, he just didn't know how to grab the cookie from the hand. So, and I'm like, okay, you're very excited. Of course, I'm not shocked, but I was like, wow, because I went from like, herding breeds are way different. Like they make trainers look amazing. I'm sorry, but they do. They're so easy and biddable for the most part to train as a rule of thumb, right? But it's what they're designed to do genetically. Then then I won't go back to a Papillon, and my Papillon, he's like, he's tiny, he won't eat, he's picky. And I'm like, I've never had this issue. So it became very difficult, and I had to get creative on ways to train him. Fortunately, he liked toys, but he had whatever. So anyway, so here's this lab, and I'm like, oh my gosh. By the time we were done, he's like, yes, I can do this. But he was the type of dog that needed that over and over repetition.
Right.
Same thing. And then he's like, oh, got it. Right. And yes, then he had moments of like, oh, look, a butterfly, and kind of checking things out, or what were we doing again? Kind of that. And he was very, what a nice temperament. Like he was just so sweet. He was goofy. He actually reminded me of my childhood dog Buster. We used to have, and Buster bit me in the lip when I was a kid, but I used to have labs too growing up, and just kind of goofy, dopey, okay, whatever, flexible, super cool dog in that regard. But yeah, he was, at first I'm like, this dog doesn't have a brain cell. And then finally we started seeing the brain cells come and so forth. And, but I don't remember who said that. I heard somebody saying at a seminar, and I don't know who it was, that the dogs that seem so dense, it's not that they're not intelligent. They're actually super smart, but it takes them a little while to kind of kick on. It was very interesting. And so with this pup, he was pretty good. So I was pretty pleased with it. And he lives with like a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So wow, right? And good thing he's kind of like he's like, he's one of those dogs that, like, if you tried correction, he would be like, what? It wouldn't offend him because he's super resilient and tolerant. Because when I turned him over to his family, the little kid was like throwing the toy at him. And I'm like, maybe let's not do that. But, and he's like, whatever. Okay, this is what we're doing. But it was just, not that I'm an advocate of doing that to dogs, but if you have children, you kind of want a dog who is tolerant, right?
Right.
Of those things. But yeah, it was just fascinating.
So here's Sherry Ann has a question. If you have time, what is the best way to get my super excited part to become when meeting people? Oh, right up my alley. Oh yeah. So, because I have the same issue with my puppy, even though he's gotten much, much better. But he's also going to be a year, so we've worked on it. But he decided at 10 months, he was going to start jumping up on people, which I really, really, really don't want. So one of the things you want to associate is meeting people and sitting, and in a dog training facility it's easy. So you just have somebody, you have the dog, obviously he has to be on leash, and somebody, they meet somebody, he can sit and he can get a cookie, and from that person or you. Ideally it's from the person, because they will start, because it'll just teach them to wait a little bit longer. um and also it helps, and sometimes it'll be from you. um if you try to pull him back or restrain him in any way, it just makes it worse, I just think it makes it so much more challenging for the dog, on that, right? And also try to have people be more neutral, which is hard, especially if you have a puppy, because they're going to be like, oh, what a cute puppy, and that high pitched voice makes it more challenging. And so to to that end, you want to go in there, and you don't want, because I think what happens is people want a long duration. With a young puppy you can't do it. So like, so for example, if somebody walks up, they can walk up quickly, have him sit really quickly, and quickly give him a treat, even if he doesn't stay 100% perfect. When they're really young, you just want them to understand that people approaching, make cookies, get cookies. So you're gonna have to go faster. But a lot of people want them, no, sit,
No.
wait,
Yeah.
wait, and a young puppy just can't do that, right? That's not helpful. So you want to move in quicker. Also, you also want to start working on it when you can move, because one of those ways is going to be easier for him to handle when the dog's moving, and people are coming past, right? You can give him a sit command. And remember, at this age, the sits aren't as solid either. They're going to be good sometimes they're not. But that's kind of how I'm working it with Mambo, and it seems to be helping. Even though he enjoys jumping up, he understands he likes cookies more than jumping up, so it seems to help him, with that, greeting people. The other thing is having him being out and around people with the relaxation protocol, and not always greeting people. Sometimes people are going to be in the environment, and you don't get to visit them all the time. So that's one thing too that I work with my guy, so that because you want that to keep that sociability, especially if you have um, a big dog. But you definitely want the dog to be comfortable and relaxed around dogs and people. So if you can get to training class 10 or 15 minutes earlier, do the relaxation where people, you can keep a little bit of a distance, and you can just reinforce them for just relaxing around there. Don't ask for a long time, because he's still a puppy. So, you're only going to get maybe 5-10 minutes if you're lucky, right? Any other suggestions? I know you guys might do a different, do a couple different things, but
Do you? What do you have? What do you do,
I
Joanne?
like the 1, 2, 3, go say hi. I
Yep.
don't use food, because I find that the dogs who are people have the most trouble with are the dogs that are super duper social. So they don't need the cookie. It's like, I gotta go see that person, right? And
Yeah.
though
Yeah.
just the person itself is the amp up. So I really like, and I do that with puppies anyway, right? Putting that auto check in on
right.
the puppies, because it helps with everything, right? I'm important. Like, I want you to check in with me, whether it's scary, whether it's exciting, whether it's whatever. Like, let's have a connection before you make a decision by yourself, kind of. And so what I ask for is, I will ask for a sit, and when the dog has a check-in with me, not just like, yeah, okay, oh god, person, right? I'm looking for an overall calm demeanor in the dog, where they can say, oh, yep, I can sort of maintain my sit, not as an obedience command, but as I'm calm enough to hang out in this
Sit
position.
down, yeah.
I'm calm enough to say, yes, I can actually make a conscious decision that I'm checking in with you now. And I like to view it kind of as that, may I please go say hi to that person? And then you're like, yes, let's go say hi, right? And then, just as Nancy said, when you're first doing it, because the people bring that dog so far back up into arousal, it's that cookie on the nose, right? Like, okay, let's go this way, right? And as a magnet, we're leaving. You said hi, a couple of seconds, let's get out of there.
Yep. Actually, Suzanne had, and Liz just came up with, reminded me of an exercise we did. One exercise we did with It was a Suzanne exercise. It was really effective, Sherry. We should probably have a workshop on that. It was really good. So people are sitting. You have like 4 or 5 people sitting, and it's building on Joanne's one to go say hi. The puppy sits, go say hi. The people feed the puppy. You call the puppy away. You go down to the next person. Call the and then the people are sitting initially, so it helps for with the jumping up and the excitement, and then it helps put in that that command, go say hi, so the dog can wait, and maybe you can make that connection before going say hi. And starting with some people sitting would be a good idea. Actually, I should probably do that with my own puppy. Workshop. The other thing Liz has done with one of our daycare dogs, who was so excited, was the hi cue was the cue for the dog to lay down. So when people would come and go hi, the dog would automatically lay down, because this dog was such a jumper. And it works beautifully. The dog, they in our day train, the dog, Liz taught him to go, hi puppy. The dog immediately laid down, so that kept him from jumping up, and reinforce that's when people approach that helps. So those are all like different methodologies. And also definitely always not greeting people all the time, because sometimes you can't greet people, right? Sometimes that's why the relaxation and the auto check-in are really valuable. And that's why we teach them as a foundation, because those are things you're going to need for life, especially as you head an adolescent, which I have right now. So I am working on my puppy being calm around, when there's a lot of stuff going on, and he's not always going to get to greet people, because sometimes that's not an option. Sometimes you can't.
I do think that, so when I work with it, my first step is always connection with my dog prior to engagement with anything else. So when I we talked about it before, the up and down game, just for an orientation until the dog starts focusing. And then you're like, okay, now I can have eye contact, and then I'll pay the eye contact. And we work on relaxing and not getting excited in the environment, regardless of whether it's a person or a dog. And then we work on threshold, which is getting closer, in proximity. But I think that what happens is we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot when we let our puppies greet everybody on leash.
Yeah.
And we started off on the bad foot, right? So, and I want my dogs to be around people and so forth. But if I have an over social dog, my border collie, for example, he'll jump on everybody. And so I've had to work on not doing that. And sometimes I care. He's so gentle, and I'm like, well, do I care? And again, it's your dog, you get to pick, right? So if you don't want the jumping, or that's a problem for you, well, then you start off with your dog saying you never get to say hi for a while until you're calm, cool, and collected.
Right.
And then you work on 2 things. One is there's a difference with a person approaching the dog versus you approaching the person.
Right.
Right. So those are, you have to start playing and proofing your behaviors based upon what's going to happen in your environment.
Right. Yeah, no, we did. Remember, Lisa, that was a workshop we did a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it was super, super effective, and it helps really with jumping up. And starting with people sitting was really, really effective, especially for a dog, a dog that likes to jump up, was really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's all of the above. So, there's not one way to do it. There's multiple ways to do it. So it's just a matter of trying different things, but teaching them how to remain neutral, and keeping calm, keeping them calm around people and other dogs, even though you want them to be friendly. But yeah, they're not people. Being around people doesn't mean you're going to greet people all the time. Sometimes you get to, sometimes you don't. So it's really important that you make that distinction, so they're just not running up to everybody, because that also encourages pulling, just like like greeting, like dogs playing on leash, that encourages pulling. So I don't really like to do that, right? But
I'm curious. Tim said my dogs are still bossy with a butt plant, with a sit. What do you mean by bossy? Like in the greetings, like they just pull,
or he wants. I think they still want to be petted, or want that interaction.
Okay.
Which
I was curious.
Pushy, just like Tango. Tango's that way. He loves people so much. He's like, you got to touch me. You got to lean on me. You got to do that. It's like, yeah, but sometimes they can't. and he was easy to teach that because he does genuinely like people. In Joanne's case, she's right. The dog was genuinely, he wanted to meet people. He didn't care about food, so we never used food. We used petting. But most dogs, the majority of the dogs, they using food is more clear. For Tango, he had to wait so that he can get petted. So that's how he figured that out. So,
I don't know about you guys, not to go off topic here, but I mean, in teaching basic obedience classes, I have noticed there is way more like golden retriever sociability in some dogs, and like way more like there's the road is kind of splitting. I mean, you used to only see super duper social dogs like every once in a while, like, and I use Goldens, not all Goldens, but like they were the classic, like you walked in the room and they were like, hi, oh my god, hi, right from like 100 feet away. But I'm seeing that more and more and more, like, and I'll be honest, it's a lot of Goldens and Labs and like sporting breeds and stuff, but it just seems more over the top than what it has been previously. Like, so I don't know what to think about that.
And I think a lot of it comes from, like a lot of it comes from people are, we're also getting inundated with dogs with really severe behavior problems too. So I think breeders are trying to trying to balance things out with breeding really good dogs, right? Because I think a softer temperament. I think we're dealing with so much aggression and so many difficult dogs. I think society is getting a little tired of it, right? It's just becoming such a problem.
I know, but it's this like the social stuff sometimes is like over the top. You're struggling to keep your dog's attention and connection with you because they're so social. It's weird.
But is it so then? And then that, because I've seen that too, and I'm like, okay, why is the dog being over social? Is there something else going on? Right? Because then you look at, okay, is there something physical going on? Is this their way of? Because then, of course, you start analyzing it, right, to try to figure out why. But other thoughts that come to my mind is this part of the fidget of the freeze, flight, and everything? Are they fidgeting to move away from their owner for some reason? And if they're pulling at the end of the leash, you have all those components to it. But I mean, I wish what I've seen in my classes, I have small classes, like 3 to 5 tops. 5 is tops, and I'll do one class for a minimum of 3. But this last puppy class was awesome because we worked on hanging out. Your friends are there, but we're still together. So engagement, then relaxing and chilling out. And by the end of the session, I'm like, this is amazing. Like, wow, look at your dogs paying attention to you. And they're not interested in engaging the other dogs, right? They're sociable enough, but they did really well. And I think those foundations are huge to, like Nancy had mentioned, the eye contact, the engagement, and then the settling or relaxation stuff and everything. I think starting out classes like that is good, and then to get the dog's brain in a place of learning, right? But the sociability part, I think too, also, my question would be, are these dogs going to daycare?
Oh,
That's
they may be.
Question.
Right?
Yeah.
I wonder, because I do see a lot of exuberance out of some of those dogs that go to daycare a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, no, and I think, and it's one of those things. It's like you want, and the thing is, I think a lot of the puppy classes and stuff out there are very restrictive, meaning they don't let the dogs explore the world, and they don't let them explore the people, and they don't let them do a lot of that. And I just feel like the dogs aren't, when you can't do something, no, don't do that. It's almost seems like the dogs want to do it more. Right. And at puppy classes, because the truth is, all the behaviors, the sit, stay, down, the dogs are going to learn that. That's not even a thing. The dogs will learn it. It's just puppy classes are learn how to work, how to manage their world, and how to figure out how to manage the social time with the other puppies, how to manage the other people and how they interact with the other people, how to get them used to, different surfaces and things like that. Because I think they need to really learn, how to navigate that. The learning piece the obedience commands, they learn those in almost no time at all. It
Right.
takes nothing for them to learn that. So
Yeah. This is thoughts on jumping as a displacement behavior. And I feel like I'm seeing a lot of jumping in dogs who are stressed versus excited. Yeah,
Yep.
I don't know that I see that any newer than what it is.
Mhm.
I think what people are, and Liz, like I know you're a trainer and I know you've been doing it for a while, but it seems like from some of your comments you're just like coming into your own. It's like that new door opens and you're like, oh my God, all these things that I wasn't focused on before. Right. And
Mhm.
I think some of that's just age and how long we do it. It was interesting because as I was a younger trainer, the jumping stuff as displacement, like, yeah, you knew that that's what happened, but you didn't really realize how stressful it was for the dog. It was
Yeah.
more, we always thought about it more as obedience and jumping versus like, oh my God, get me out of here.
yes.
And I have a dog that does that now, right? And when he is in stressful situations, he like crawls up me, and
Yeah.
it's the most annoying thing. But right, I mean,
Yeah.
and people are like, no, stop it, right? They're just not recognizing what it is. So I think for me, at least with him, like it's more about I hear you, let me fix something, and getting people in general to understand this is not obedience. This is right. The dog is almost moved from stress to panic, right? And how do you help that? What can we fix? What can we remove? What can we get rid of? Because most people that come to dog classes have no idea that that is stress related.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's body language though, right? So the question is that how to tell the difference would be, where's the dog's orientation at? Is the dog's orientation looking out the door? Are they climbing up on the person? Are they have their mouth wide open? They haven't even ran anywhere, stuff like that versus, excited, which excited looks more bouncy, I think.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you were to look at
Less
and kind
grabby.
of, right, less grabby, right.
Less
I know,
grabby.
and you know who comes to mind? You know what breed, not being a breedist, but you know what breed's coming to mind? Shepherds. I've seen a lot of shepherds go
Oh yeah.
climbing up. I'm like, you have claws. But
Yes.
Yep.
but
Yep.
I've seen a lot of that, but I've also seen it in other breeds, but the shepherds, because I'm like, why are you climbing on me? And it's just all nerves. And it's
Yeah.
interesting.
And don't you feel too? You usually get some of the like the
Yes.
little vocalizations with it. So, and this is where I think for me, like back in my 20s, finally like getting to know Suzanne's Clothier's Carrot program was eye opening because you talk about like stress with the way we think about it, which is I'm hiding, I'm cowering, all the compression, right? What
Right.
we normally think stress looks like. And there's the whole other side of it, which is the jumping, the squeaking, the barking, the spinning, all of that. And it never struck as like stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're like, wow, that's just the other side of all the cowering, right?
And I think that's although because of where we came from or where training first originated, right? It wasn't about emotions or what was
Right.
happening the internal state of the dog, right? So I think that kind of shaped it. And then you're like, oh yeah, I could see that, right? And it becomes different. It's just then it becomes once you know it and you see it and you feel it, you have to do something about it. It's just moral and ethically in you.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Once you see this stuff, you can't unsee it. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and like my little beagle, now she's doing pretty good. But early on, she would, when we would be at different places, she'd be climbing on me, and it wasn't, it was a little bit of stress. And so I know, honey.
Jive's not stress though. That's food hunger.
She's like, I'll climb on you.
Because it's time for dinner. So she doesn't do that so much anymore. So that's when too, right? It doesn't happen once a dog gains more confidence and feels better. They do it a lot less. So it's kind of so you see it kind of work itself out when they're and it usually gets better when they're if it's excitement or an excitable dog, it's a little different.
So have you ever seen this? And this always breaks my heart is when, like, it was kind of what Joanne, we were talking about, how we didn't see it as stress with the climbing. Have you ever seen owners correct the dogs for that?
Yeah, all the time.
Put them down, knock it off,
Or
it off.
step on the leash or
All it did was popped them up higher. And I'm like, let's take the dog for a walk. Go for
Yeah,
it.
and that's kind of why I mentioned to Liz, right? It's like when you see it, the first step isn't to help the dog. I mean, the first step is to get the human understanding why the dog is doing it. This is not an obedience problem, right? This is a stress problem. And I
Yeah.
think once people can go, what are you talking about? And you're like, look at what's happening. This is what the dog, helping them to identify the cause of it, right? If you know it. But just being able to, like, instead of trying to get them to sit, how about we do this? Like, give them other options to help reduce the stress. Let's get out of here. Let's go for a walk. Let's play the up down game. Let's do, something, some cookie chases, right? If you want, let's let the dog chase a cookie, one way, then the other way, whatever, right? To get them a little bit, I hate to say calm down, but that's exactly what I'm saying, right? Like, how do we reduce your stress?
Right. And it goes back about people's ideas about doing some things. Debbie had mentioned about if you give the dogs raw food, they're going to, what if you feed them raw, what did she say?
It causes aggression.
It causes aggression, which is ridiculous. So sometimes a lot of people, and I heard somebody just say this if you do the cookie or chase and come back or whatever, that the dog's going to always look for food on the floor. No, nope, not true, because I've done it with my own dogs and it's not a problem. My dogs.
Did you do it with Jive? Because I think maybe that caused that problem.
No, I did it with her, but she just likes to eat,
No,
but yeah.
I think I really would like to start a collection of all of us that have fed raw for like 10, 15 years, right? Like,
Yes.
can we get a donation and like give it to a lab and say, can somebody please like unbiasedly really do some studies on raw feeding? I mean, it's sort of happening, but the billions of dollars are going to, the kibble feeders. And I have nothing against kibble, not one thing.
Right.
I just, and here's the thing. Some of the raw people are not helping us out at all either, because they're making claims that are not proven, that are not
Right.
like, you can say, I have an opinion. I have an opinion that it's healthier for my dogs. I have an opinion that it keeps their poop firmer. And, I have that opinion. Do I have any studies? Nope. Science doesn't back that up at all.
Right.
But I wish, I know someday it will.
Yeah.
But we don't have money to run those studies yet. So,
yeah.
sorry,
All right, guys. So these are, I mean, we have a bunch more questions. You'd be amazed what we get asked on a regular basis. But these were the kind of the more common ones that we would get. And I was, hopefully you guys would get some out of it, or at least maybe think about things. Because that's all truly what we want for you, is to really think about it when you get told something by a trainer or somebody else. And we encourage that too, for our students. And some of my students are a little radical. They ask a lot of questions, but that's okay. I want them to question, well, why are we doing it that way? Why should I do it that way? What am I going to get out of it? I want that, because then they will understand. And your trainer should allow you to ask you questions about why is that good? Why is that bad? A good trainer will do that, because you should be, a lot of my students, they keep me on my toes all the time. They're asking me questions always. And I like that, because then they really want to learn, that they really want to understand their dogs. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day, right?
Yep.
All right, all. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.